Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Welcome to today's, or the summit's first panel session on the subject of developing capital markets in Ethiopia, progress to date, challenges and opportunities. In this session, we will explore key milestones achieved so far, understand the challenges that lie ahead, and identify tremendous opportunities that a well-developed capital market could unlock for Ethiopia. We'll discuss regulatory frameworks, investor protection, public awareness, critical financial market infrastructure that's needed to sustain thriving market. Our distinguished panel of experts bring a diverse insight and perspectives on realities of building a robust capital market in Ethiopia. Each of them brings valuable experience in policy, regulation, market infrastructure, and investment, allowing us to engage in a holistic discussion on how to make Ethiopia's capital market a success story. I'm honored to moderate this discussion, and I look forward to delving into pressing topics with our esteemed panelists. With that, let us begin the discussion.
Thank you. So, in this session, the first round of questions will focus on key highlights of Ethiopia's capital market, the development journey that we have had, and then followed by subsequent questions in the areas of opportunities and challenges. And then, of course, I will invite the panelists later on to share a final message. Also, I want this session to be very interactive. I will also be, asking a couple of questions for the whole audience to respond by way of quick survey. And then later on, I will also give about 15 minutes for questions and answers. So now, my first question goes to Ms. Hana Tehelku, the Director General of the Ethiopian Capital Market Authority. My question reads like this. Our country, Ethiopia, is in a unique position as it establishes Africa's newest capital market. With Ethio Telecom shares already offered to the public and the imminent launch of the Ethiopian Securities Exchange and the Central Securities Depositories, many people are curious about the Ethiopia's story. Could you please provide key highlights of this capital market development journey? Additionally, what are the current regulatory priorities of the ECMA? Thank you.
Thank you, Asafa. It's refreshing to hear Asafa addressing me as Ms. Hana. So thank you for having me here. I mean, as you might all be well aware, issuance of shares, trading of shares has been happening in Ethiopia for quite some time now, I'd say 3 decades now. But the problem was, I'd say, the non-existence of a centralized regulator like ECMA and a robust regulatory framework. When you think about regulating a certain area, especially in a finance area, I think there are 3 major elements to that. The first one would be institutions that are crucial for regulating the finance sector. The second would be putting in place the necessary regulatory frameworks in place so that the regulator have a reference and of course to make sure that rule of law stands. As you might, some of you might be well aware, I'm from the Ministry of Justice, so rule of law is really keen to my heart, so we want to make sure that. The third one would be having technology and infrastructures in place. In terms of that, we have had a lot of milestones since the establishment of Ethiopian Capital Market Authority with Proclamation number 1248, 2021, which 23 in Ethiopia's calendar. I'm sure most of you are by now well aware that we have our own calendar. So that's the start of a regulation of capital market in Ethiopia. So the first task would be establishing Ethiopian Capital Market Authority with a clear objective and identifying its unique corner of regulation. There are different regulators. For example, I can give you an example. For example, in the financial sector, in the banking sector, we have the National Bank of Ethiopia, which have its own regulatory powers regarding the financial sector. So one of the exercises, the most exercises we've done was identifying the unique regulatory corner for Ethiopian Capital Market Authority, particularly in the issuance and trading of securities. That's what we've done. Apart from Ethiopian Capital Market Authority, Proclamation number 1248 introduces 3 more institutions for the proper functioning of Ethiopian capital market in Ethiopia. The first one would be Ethiopian Securities Exchange, which is headed by Dr. Tilahun now. And the other one would be Administrative Tribunal. We have a judge here, Mr. Abinet, and we have also the clearing and settlement side of it. So these 4 necessary institutions have been established by the proclamation. So as you can see, most, if not all of the institutions are ready and operationalized. And ISEME, or the authority, has also been working on extensively on capacity building of internal staff, this organization institutions I have mentioned, in the broader market as well. Ethiopian capital market has 4 major objectives put into the proclamation. The first 3 are mostly, aligned with international standards, and other jurisdictions have also these 3 objectives. That would be investor protection, making sure the market is fair and open, and of course reducing systemic risk. The 4th one, market development, is, I'd say, a unique role, because the Ethiopian capital market, as a latecomer, we have a duty to develop the market and equip actors like investors, issuers, and service providers in the market. The second one would be putting in place the necessary regulatory frameworks. As I have been mentioning, while we're trying to put the necessary regulatory frameworks in place, we had to navigate the existing regulatory frameworks, particularly the commercial code, because the code has several provisions on the issuances of shares, the trading of shares. So once we finalize navigating the existing regulatory frameworks and deciding the unique regulatory power of ECMA, we've put in place the necessary regulatory frameworks in place. We have 3 directives out, as you might be well aware. The first one would be the licensing and regulation of capital market service providers. We have 15 kinds of service providers. The directive puts in place the requirements for the licensing and how the service providers act while they provide capital market related services. The second one would be the fee directive, whereby the Capital Market Authority openly, transparently communicate the fees that will be levied when we get a service from the authority. It could be licensing, application, a registration of securities. The third one would be the licensing of the exchange and over-the-counter market, which was just out in a few months ago. So that will help us license the Ethiopian exchange, which is a very instrumental institution in the operationalization of Ethiopian capital market in Ethiopia. So the other upcoming finalized directives, very, very important directive in terms of, regulating particularly issuers, would be public offer and trading directive. Hopefully it will be out in the coming, I'd say 2 days, maybe on the final day, it's with Ministry of Justice, it will be registered. It introduces, I'd say, a lot of new things to the market to ensure market investor protection and boost investor confidence. The other issue I want to talk about is technology. Technology is really important to reduce transactional cost, increase efficiency in the capital market. That's one of the needs to establish a regulator, to introduce technology into the capital market, to increase efficiency and reduce transaction cost. The first technology would be the trading system with ACX. The second would be, as it has been mentioned by Governor Mamo, the second one would be Central Securities Depository, which would do automatic clearing and settlement services. The third one would be the market surveillance system, which would be with the authority to surveil the market, that market abuse and manipulations do not happen in the market. If they happen, God forbid, if they happen, so that we'll be ready to do the necessary enforcement actions. The other highlight in the capital market journey, I'd say, is collaboration with development partners and other jurisdictions. We have done a lot of benchmarking to make sure that our practices are aligned with international practices, and of course for investors, issuers from outside, to feel like home. Because if the laws are strange to foreign investors and foreign issuers, they wouldn't feel confident to come to the market. So we wanted to align our regulatory frameworks with international standards and our practices. So we have done a lot of benchmarkings with close by jurisdictions like Nairobi, Kenya, Nigeria, and to make sure that our capital market is inclusive, we've gone to Malaysia to study Sharia compliant products and services as well. The other one would be the launching of Sandbox. Maybe some of you have been in the event. We've launched a regulatory sandbox to make sure that innovative products and services are introduced to the market, and the Ethiopian Capital Market Authority is ready to regulate those products and services. So we have, as we speak now, we have 41 applicants of Sandbox. We are doing the review of those applications. One thing I want to mention while I'm discussing the milestones in the capital market journey is the IPO of Ethio Telecom. As a regulator, I need to do, I think, a disclaimer that I'm not endorsing, it's not an investment advice on my part. But in terms of a regulatory point of view, there are a lot of lessons from Ethio Telecom's IPO. The first one would be, as it has been mentioned over and over again since even the start of this summit, is the recognition of the retail investor as the core investor in the Ethiopian capital market. You know, we have more than 120 million citizens in Ethiopia. With a rough estimation now, the existing share issuance and trading, only 500,000 people are participating, if we take the financial sector as an example. But with the introduction of technology, as Ethio Telecom has done with its Ethio Telebir, we want the public at large to participate in the Ethiopian capital market. That one of the highlights of the Ethio Telecom IPO is that, of course, retail investors has to be complemented by institutional investors and international investors, but for us, the Ethiopian public is the core investor. The second one is, it was an exercise, a test exercise, I'd say, of our regulatory frameworks, if they have been contextualized enough to make sure that they're workable in Ethiopia. As I've been mentioning, we have the Public Offer Directive, the draft, which would be out in a couple of days. We have tested that directive to make sure that our regulatory frameworks work in Ethiopia. I'd say, as the Director General, you know, I have to talk only good things about my authority. So I'd say that the directive works well for our market, with, of course, the support of the authority as our mandate for capital market development. Thank you.
DG Hana, I think she has highlighted some of the major milestones of the capital market development journey, including the regulatory framework, establishment of key institutions like the exchange, the CSD, and then of course discussion of, you know, inclusive market, and then, you know, innovative projects and initiatives that the ECMA has, the regulatory sandbox. Now, we are, while staying in the same team, I would be asking Dr. Brook Taye, the CEO of Ethiopian Investment Holding, the next question. Considering the broader macroeconomic reform programs of the government of Ethiopia, particularly the homegrown economic reform program agenda. What priorities does the Ethiopian Investment Holding have to support its portfolio companies in advancing capital market development?
Thanks so much, Asafa. First, I really wanted to congratulate Hana, the entire team, for hosting such an amazing event. I mean, the room speaks for itself. For all of you who attended this event, I'm sure you guys were our champions driving this reform and making sure that capital market is a byword in terms of what we are doing. So I really want to thank everyone who's here, the development partners who showed us, who provided us all the support that we needed, and also the entire audience who are here. I really want to thank you for your continued support to the team and to the entire reform activity that we're working on. In terms of the priority areas for EIH, of course, we have two major tasks that we are focusing right now. The first is our portfolio optimization exercise to make sure that all our companies, 33 of our companies, perform at par or beyond their comparables in the region. So we're driving our reform strategy with three important pillars. First, we're trying to diversify as much as we can in terms of service, in terms of product, and in terms of geographic area. Second, we want all our SOEs to be the driving force in terms of economic change in our country. And third, we need to deliver. We need to deliver in terms of paying dividend to Ministry of Finance, in terms of generating foreign currency, new foreign currency source, all of these SOEs being a new source, and then also deliver in terms of our commitment that the share and contribution of our SOEs in terms of the overall economic activity will expand. In order to do that, obviously tapping into the capital market will be a priority. That's why Ethio Telecom started with the 10% offering, and we have identified, as you know, 5 other state-owned enterprises to be potentially listed, and we're working with wonderful support of the World Bank team in the past, identifying 5 companies. So in general, for us, the first task is identifying the equity story of all these SOEs. Is there a reason for them to be listed? Is debt finance the most appropriate structure in terms of issuing corporate bond, or is it better to list a certain amount of equity in these markets and then raise capital from domestic and international investors? So we're looking at all of that, but it fits rightly in terms of the overall homegrown economic reform agenda, which is we need to bring in as much private sector participation in our economic development. And then, as you know, our SOEs have a significant role in driving economic growth. So how do we balance that? What's the right role? What's the purpose of each SOEs in terms of their mandate in delivering commercial return, but at the same time, their public service obligation. So it aligns perfectly with that agenda. We continue to look at the market's development, the exchange launch, and offer additional companies to be listed. We're already having a conversation internally which companies should be a priority, but you should expect more from EIH in terms of listing companies. The second aspect is obviously investment. We're very active in terms of looking at new investment. We put ourselves as a de-risking partner for any foreign investor that's coming to Ethiopia. Our investment with Top and Gravity, I'm sure you've seen their stand outside. Ethiopia had a problem. We've been securing our passports from abroad, and we've discovered that during COVID, we are not a priority. Even if we want to pay, we're not a priority. So it became an access issue. So what EIH team has done is secured, identified one of the top passport printing companies, brought them in Ethiopia, partnered with EIH, and now we're in the process of building a secure printing facility in Ethiopia, and this is the role of EIH. Now, our share in this company is 49% with all of other SOEs that participated. This would be a potential exit strategy for us if we no longer wanted to stay in this partnership. So there are many different activities that we think that further develop the exchange to have more expansion in Ethiopia.
Thank you, Dr. Brook. So, we see a lot of work from EIH, especially, maximizing the potential of portfolio companies, also, by way of that supports capital market development, and then also the investment EIH has is also a great potential for capital market. So my next question goes to Dr. Tilahun Kassahun, CEO of the Ethiopian Securities Exchange. While staying in the same team, from the perspective of the Ethiopian Securities Exchange, as the newest exchange operator globally, what are ESX priorities to maximize this unique opportunity?
Thanks, Asafa, and also the audience. Just as Dr. Brook said, it looks very exciting, amazing, and I think, again, thank you for being patient to keep listening to us as we await launching of the Ethiopian Securities Exchange. To pick up on the question from, obviously, opportunities and what makes us unique, obviously, as a young exchange, as a young market, as a nascent market, we had the opportunity to draw whatever we wanted on this canvas. And in doing so, we not only learned from the best, obviously we've been, for instance, to LACG, to Euronext, a lot to learn, but also you need to go to exchanges that are not so much. And in doing so, one thing that we've learned is, one, that capital markets, and I could ask, for instance, the audience on how we define capital markets, and I think we'll get 100 different types of answers. But I think one thing that summarizes it is, often what happens on the exchanges, what happens on the markets is seen as a tip of the iceberg, and often we judge the performance of those markets based on what we see probably on the news media. And most likely, for instance, if we evaluate Kenya, we would probably see, how many listed companies does NSE have, and what's the market liquidity, market cap, etc., and completely disregarding how deep the Kenyan debt market is and how effective and how successful Kenya has been in terms of promoting foreign investment into the capital markets. So a lesson for newer exchanges and newer markets is to take care of all sides of the business. And I think from probably 4 or 5 of the speakers you've heard today, and all of them mentioned the importance of creating a sustainable debt market. And that comes all the way from Dr. Iyo, from Minister of Finance, the governor, and IFC. And I think that is a big, huge opportunity that needs to be exploited, and that is a major opportunity that we saw. So in creating ESX, what we made sure was to not only we will have a robust equity market, and I think Ethio Telecom would already put us probably on the top, I would say, 20 exchanges or 15 exchanges in the continent, because at least with 2.5 billion market cap, I think there are several exchanges that haven't really even reached that. So equity markets grow like that, and I think this privatization conversation is also relevant, because that's how many of the exchanges grew and developed their equity market. A lesson in that space is, I think as an African exchanges, we haven't done much about promoting startups, innovative companies, family-owned businesses to come to market. And I think majority of the exchanges in the continent have relied on government privatizations. And as things were exciting as they start the market, down the line, their performance plateaued, both the number of listings, but also the liquidity in the market. So it's very important, again, as we develop our market, we also had to create an alternative market, which caters for startups and SMEs to raise funds and do it in a regulated manner, right? So that's probably where Ms. Hana was, DG Hana was speaking about sandboxes. We think that is still relevant today. It's not a luxury, again, to talk about innovative products and innovative startups. And that's the way you build a sustainable market. So just to add one more thing, what you would also see in most markets, there was, I would say, an intentional effort to build a staging environment for both the equity market and the debt market. So 2 years ago when we started this project and we were chatting, interviewing, having discussions with all the treasurers almost in the commercial banks, we asked them, why they don't participate in the treasury bill market when, the yields are not that bad. We understand inflation was high. And thank God today, if you heard it from Dr. Yob and Governor Mamo, that one of our probably success stories, and it will be told down the line, probably would forget about how good the exchange was, but I think developing the capital market was conditional to the fact that we are intentional about our monetary policy, our goal to tame inflation. Of course, so other than the inflationary pressure that was in the market, most banks told us that there is no liquidity in the banking environment, and if they had liquidity in their treasury account or settlement account, they needed a safety or a backup, and that's why they actually had to keep a lot of probably liquidity in that settlement account. So the first order of business for building a sustainable debt market was to fix the interbank money market, and we're glad NB actually has taken action on that. We're glad that we are participants in that endeavor. Next order of business would be, how can we ensure corporates and government can issue shorter term debt instruments? For corporates, it's probably commercial papers, 2 to 5 year bond instruments. And for government, the same. And if you make that effective, I think a 10-year, 20, 40-year bond market is within a very close horizon. So the opportunity for, maybe to answer your question, Asafa, directly, is it's easier to design a market that fits your ecosystem because, one, you had a lot of support. Second, there are not many vested interests that actually strangle the development of a sustainable debt market. Most likely I'm talking about the brokerage industry that actually had strangled much of the African exchanges in terms of ensuring liquidity in the debt market. So our debt market would be a very much efficient, direct, and what we call an OTC type of exchange. And I think most importantly then, as you build, I would say an active liquid market, we have this huge retail investor, huge, I would say, economic potential that attracts both domestic and foreign institutional investors. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tilahun. As we've heard, the Ethiopian Securities Exchange is adding a new barometer for the Ethiopian economy, investors, to look into the spectrum of instruments that are traded from money market to equities and debt instruments. So, my next question goes to DG Hana. I will say staying in the Ethio Telecom story, as Ethio Telecom leads the way in raising capital on the new Ethiopian capital market, obviously other companies are expected to follow. So the question is, at this early stage of development, what are the top 3 factors that will make capital market issuances more mainstream and scalable in Ethiopia? And then also if you can comment on the participation of other especially financial sector ecosystem in this endeavor.
Thank you, Asi. We're just starting. I wouldn't know what would work or not, but we have an idea and we are working on it. To have like scalable, vibrant, dynamic, moving market, we need to have, the first thing would be to have a robust regulatory framework in place. As a regulator, I might say the word like 100 times, bear with me. You need to have a robust regulatory framework whereby you kind of balance capital formation and investor protection, of course, and you balance transparency and, of course, compliance costs from the issuers and the actors in the market. When we think about regulatory frameworks, we need, I think the outcome we're expecting is the first one would be to have a trusted issuers, trusted and transparent issuers. We want to transpire the success story in the financial sectors. We have more than 30 banks and insurance companies which have been formed with kind of a capital market exercise without a regulatory present. But we want to transfer that success story to a diversified sector. That would, in return, increase investors' involvement, would increase more options for the investors, depending on even their preferences. Sometimes when you talk about diversified products and services, it's not only about what the market, what the economy needs, but what the investor wants to invest in. If a person wants to invest in green products, we need to have green products. If a person wants to invest in a company who has a proper ESG, environmental and social governance in place, we should provide them that. So we need to have an all-encompassing regulatory framework in place. And when we talk about, of course, regulatory framework, we shouldn't, of course, forget service providers, because service providers play a huge role in facilitating the interaction between the issuers and the investors. They'll help them to make an informed investment decision. They facilitate through technology. For example, brokers, with their broker back office, they do anti-money laundering tasks. They have a great role in the capital market ecosystem. So this regulatory frameworks, flexible regulatory frameworks, should support all the actors to come to the market, and for issuers to have easy access to a capital formation, and for the investors to feel protected by an authority and robust regulatory framework. The second one would be technology. We need to have the proper technologies in place to achieve the things we have stated earlier, to reduce a cost, to increase efficiency, and to increase inclusion and participation and engagement from the broader public. When the publics are involved, transactions are happening, there are more liquidity. That will, of course, attract more capital market service providers to the ecosystem. The other one would be, because Dr. Brook is here, I want to mention one of the practices we can do is using the capital market as a machinery of privatization, as it happens with Ethio Telecom, which will increase the scalability of the capital market in Ethiopia. Because it will show kind of the commitment of the government to use the capital market machinery as a tool for privatization. And of course, which will transpire to the public, the public at large, to come to the market as well. That's what we can do to do the market scalable.
My next question goes to Dr. Brook. Of course, you know, the CEO of one of the largest sovereign wealth funds in Africa. You have mentioned you have 33 companies under your management. So we just wanted to hear more about, you know, the potential of privatizing SOEs, because at early stage of capital market development, many countries have used privatization as a vehicle to support the development of the market. So maybe if you can comment a little bit more on, you know, these processes, especially, you know, including, you know, the issuance of equity, not only equity, but also, you know, using debt financing schemes. Also, additionally, how Ethiopia position itself as, you know, a key investment destination in Africa, as, you know, part of, you know, leveraging the opportunities that is provided through capital market.
Thank you so much for that question. I think maybe let me start by correcting one thing. The government of Ethiopia does not have a privatization agenda. What we have is SOE reform agenda. So through that process, if divestiture of state-owned enterprises becomes a priority, then that will happen. So we don't look at state-owned enterprises and we look at and say, okay, we need to privatize X or Y or Z. We look at the overall state-owned enterprise reform agenda. From that point of view, I go back to what I said earlier, which is there an equity story of a specific state-owned enterprise that we offer equity of Ethio Telecom or other SOEs that we've already identified and working on to the public, to international investors. With Ethio Telecom 10% offering, there was a strategic decision that 10% of it needs to be offered through the capital market, because this is it followed the capital market process with the approval of the prospectus by the Ethiopian Capital Market Authority, and the subsequent listing through an exchange would make the whole SOE reform story much more relevant. So the way we look at it is not from a privatization point of view. We look at it from an SOE reform point of view. So now, when you talk about SOE reform, then there are so many capital needs of these SOEs, and each have their own unique circumstances. The need of Ethiopian Insurance Corporation versus the need of Ethiopian Shipping Lines Corporation is completely different. So some of it we want to achieve by offering an equity share through the exchange. Some we wanted to do a corporate bond structure. But we're also looking at the overall strength of EIH portfolio. We're currently doing a consolidated financial report, which means for the first time we will have an audited, verified statement of how much our SO is worth, not because we say it, but it's something that's audited, IFRS compliant, and with an external auditor statement in terms of certifying that. Now, imagine the value of that financial book with Ethiopian Airlines, Commercial Bank of Ethiopia, Ethio Telecom, Ethiopian Shipping Lines, all of this combined under one book, and add a rating agency being rating this specific sovereign wealth fund, and what we can do in terms of an offer through the exchange. It could be a debt offering or some sort of structure that we can, CIS structure that we can put out there. So, but I take your point. Most state-owned enterprises being offered on the exchange, it has a significant amount of impact in terms of accelerating adoption. As we speak, Ethio Telecom's share is going really well. I'm represent the ownership, so I don't have any conflict. I encourage all of you to secure your retirement share of Ethio Telecom immediately. In my understanding is that this is flying off the shelf, but this type of structure in terms of access, allowing people to have access to Ethio Telecom will tell us significant amount of data. So going through the app, offering a certain amount of share to the market, and then based on that, we can really start looking at the other alternatives as well. In terms of making Ethiopia an investment, attractive investment environment, for me, it's already an investment, a very attractive investment environment. What is lacking is the consciousness of significant amount of investors not knowing what's going on in the market. The minute that they land and see what's going on, what's really happening, and really read beyond the headline of what happens in Ethiopia, and they see the return and the attractiveness, they'll be convinced. But we have a lot of work ahead of us in terms of making sure that we convince people that they should invest in Ethiopia of 2024, not think of Ethiopia of the 1980s. So we're in a different era.
Emphasis is SOE reform, not privatization. And then, of course, there is a lot of opportunities for both domestic and international investors to invest in. Thank you. So now I go back to Dr. Tilahun, to the ASX CEO. So staying in the same team, so what measures are being implemented to establish a robust and secure financial market infrastructure that will support the trading, clearing, and settlement of securities in Ethiopia, obviously Ethio Telecom shares, and then future listing as well?
Thank you, Asafa. So yes, obviously, speaking of markets, we always think of technology. By now, I think you've already captured my attitude about many things. As we speak about technology within the exchanges, you also need to somehow reflect around what has been the development of, I would say, financial technology in Ethiopia, and at least in the continent and globally. Building a matching engine, an RFQ system that matches our orders and sends that order to the Central Securities Depository for clearing and settlement is not a nuclear science. It's now there, up and running, tested, serving the money market. So we're glad we're there. But second, we also want to make it very easy for investors to invest. As much as it's easy today to consume, to spend money, it has to be really, really easy for us to save and invest. So we went out of our way trying to buy a broker back office system, an order management system, a mobile application system for our would-be brokers. So if there are any brokers or on the pipeline in here, we really didn't want you to take time to understand what that technology need is and to acquire it and test it. So that's what second thing that we did. Third thing I think I would like to say is we rely on what you call, the shoulders of giants. The Ethiopian capital market ecosystem relies primarily today on retail investors. And if we would have had to go through the conventional IPO process for Ethio Telecom, for instance, where an investment bank has to be there, an underwriter has to be there, and they have to do roadshows for institutional investors, it would only be half successful unless we involve foreign investors. So the fact that there is already Telebur, and that the fact that we can actually reach 50 million Telebur users to access a certain IPO is a big milestone. So if this was tried 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we will not be successful. So that's already, I would say, part of the technology ecosystem that's supporting the development of the capital market ecosystem. Once subscriptions are done and finished, dematerialization is done, the securities will be fetched to the central securities depository, and from which we trade and transact. I think most importantly, you also have to see, just like I said, we need to have a broader definition of what capital markets are. We also have to understand how technology is now more useful to, yes, partly to spend and consume a lot, but also saving is much more easier than it used to be. I challenge all the banks in the room to see what Kenya is doing, what South Africa is doing, what Nigeria is doing in terms of their money market funds. And I think Safaricom has a good experience in Kenya with Mali. I guarantee you, probably when we speak, is it an annual summit or a 2-year summit? Probably by the 3rd summit or 4th summit, we will have probably 500 billion Ethiopian birr saved in these money market funds. You could do it on your mobile application. You could do it on your by accessing fund managers. So in that sense, I think from technology point of view, we are not starting where any typical exchange would have started. I think all exchanges in Africa started from a manual platform. That's why they call their markets boards, because they used to write with pen and paper or a marker on a whiteboard. And I see Victor here, Florence, who's our advisor from all the way from Nairobi, who sits with us. She started her work at NAC by writing the tickers in the whiteboards of NAC. Those days are gone, and I'm glad we're not going back to where many exchanges started. But I think you also need to see it that, building a vibrant capital markets ecosystem technology-wise, the exchange is not operating on its own. It's operating with, in cooperation with many. Thank you.
ASX as a latecomer, has the advantage of, using the best technologies, also learning from global standards. I have a few more questions to the panelists, so I'm just wanted to give opportunity for the participants if you have any question for our distinguished panelists.
Thank you. My name is Trungo Dunku. Just to take the first floor. From the very beginning, I would like to thank the Capital Market Authority to organize this summit. And I joined this summit by my personal initiative. I am from Bahar Dar University. I would like to raise some points. The first one is just as it is explained by Mr. Hirut. It is just essential to align the capital market regulatory frameworks to the international frameworks. I think that is quite appreciable to take that milestone to make alignment with the international standards with regard to the capital market. And also there is also the lesson that is taken from developing countries like Kenya. That lesson maybe presented by one of the panelists, I heard that is also quite appreciable. The point that I want to raise is about the risk management and the financial stability issue. So given the Ethiopia's limited experience in the capital market, maybe I may also say absence, in that respect, it is essential to prioritize the risk management frameworks that to mitigate the volatility of the market in Ethiopia. So what risk management frameworks are being put in place to protect the market from such volatility? That is the first question to you. And the other one is, in Ethiopia, just we have seen practical gaps. That means the gap from the theoretical and the practical gaps. In universities, graduates are just acquiring theoretical knowledge in different universities, but while they are coming to the industry, sometimes, in fact, it is not sometimes, most of the time, the graduates are required to take additional trainings. So that is, I think, for the country, it is an extra burden, while the universities can do that. So, in this regard, since the capital market is the newly emerging and largely dominating market, what the capital market authority, or how the capital market authority is planning to curb this problem or to minimize these skill gaps with the graduates and the industry requirements. I think since I am from university, okay, I think it is my responsibility to fill the gap with partnering to the capital market authority and other partnering organizations such as IFC and the Development Bank. So it is something we are actively looking to address, particularly in the capital market partnership. So Bahada University, specifically my Department of Accounting and Finance.
Sorry, in the interest of time, I would like to limit your questions to these two, and then I would like to give opportunities for others, with big apologies.
Okay.
So there are two questions, so risk management related, and then capacity and skill gap.
Capacity,
so,
yeah, thank you
let's
so
go.
much.
For the next questions, limit just one question, no comment, just only a single question, please.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. I am Najib Ali from Zamzam Bank. I appreciate the endeavors of Ethiopian capital market and this gentleman sitting in front of us. I have met you several times and occasions. I'm glad this opportunity is created for all of us. After appreciating your endeavors.
Sorry, just on the question, just single question. Straight to the question, only one question, no comment, no any suggestion, please. I don't have time.
Okay, please. I have a question for three of them, so I will speak at once. For Dr. Brook and my sister, and also for Dr. Tilahun. For Dr. Brook, the investment holding company you are leading now is selling its capital to different banks. Did you have any capital offering for Islamic banks which we can pick right away? Because that signifies what we call inclusivity. Second, for my sister over there, Ethio Telecom issue is raised. 10% of its capital is being offered in the capital market. We appreciate that. So how many percent of that capital is Sharia compliant, and how are you trying to include Muslim or Sharia compliant or ethical investors in the offering? For the Dr. Tilahun, probably you know that this capital market issue is new for everyone, and apparently it is very new and also challenging for Muslim communities in Ethiopia. So what is your plan of addressing awareness creation for this large public we have in our country? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, another, okay, next to that, okay.
Thank you very much. I will
Please, just one question, okay? No comment, no
all
anything.
right, I will
just
not
only one.
comment. I will stick to my question, okay? I do have 3 questions. Very short and brief questions. Number 1, is Ethio Telecom is put itself as a service provider? That is my first question. So, is it service provider for its own products only, or for other products as well? If Ethio Telecom is service provider for other products as well, how other service providers are going to compete with this large company, as it has already technology labor? Question number 2, regarding the technology, is there any softwares or another technology that can service providers produce for their services, or are they get from ESX? This is my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My question is for Capital Market Authority. Have there been any headways in terms of attracting third-party rating agencies? And in terms of international investor regulation, have there any headways in that as well? Thank you. Have there been any regulation in terms of how we regulate in them investing in the capital market?
International investors. First question. Okay, thank you. The first question, following that.
Okay, the first question, have there been any headways in terms of attracting third-party rating agencies like Finch and other rating agencies? Because the IPO, the Ethio Telecom IPO, was rated by Deloitte. That one was in terms of its taxes and how it performed year by year. But I want to know, in terms of company, have there been any headways in terms of attracting third-party rating agencies? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I think some of the questions are directly addressed to each panelist. So there are questions on Islamic finance for all of them, capacity building issues from and risk management from Bahar Dar University, also from Ethio Telecom perspective, whether it is a service provider, the impact of competition in technology, and then the last question on international investors and rating agencies. So I would invite each of the panelists to give answers. I'll start with DG Hana, whatever you picked, and then Dr. Brook, and then Dr. Tilahun.
In terms of the first question from Bahar Dar University about risk management frameworks, if you refer to our Capital Market Service Providers Licensing and Regulation Directive number 996, you can see that we have put in place that service provider need to have a risk management framework in place if they want to be an actor in the capital market ecosystem. That, of course, include even the exchange to have a risk management frameworks. While we're reviewing their application for service provision, for being an exchange or an OTC market, derivative markets, we evaluate those documents and make sure that they are in place, they address the potential and actual risks relating to the exercise they're going to perform in the capital market ecosystem. But broadly, if Dr. Tilahun has anything to add to that, I'll give him, once I finish the questions, the floor. The second one would be, in terms of introducing capital market into curriculums in universities, we have a plan for developing capital market related curriculum in the universities in collaboration with Ministry of Education, of course. Even before that, we've been in contact with different universities, including Hawassa, Mekelle, and Bahar Dar, and other universities as well. And we are also planning to have a chapters, kind of branches in universities to do capacity building works and to be our kind of contact persons and point of capacity building and investor awareness in different regions. When we talk about inclusive market, we should include citizens in every corner of the country. So we've been working on it. But if you can leave your contacts with my team, if you're leading accounting and finance department, or I've heard that you work for that department, we can discuss further. In terms of Sharia compliant products, as you can see, I don't have any veil on my head. And I think we need to have a Sharia board in place to decide if a product and a service is a Sharia compliant product and service. We are on the process of engaging with the necessary regulatory institution. It's not like we as a regulatory authority decide which product is Sharia compliant. It is according to the laws, maybe the Sharia of the Islamic religion to be decided by the relevant accepted authority. That's why we're working towards having that board and decide with the products and institutions if they are Sharia compliant or not. And even if the board decides, I feel like the individual person have the discretion to say that I believe in this is my religious stand, and I'm investing in this or not. So we have we are planning to engage with the relevant religious institutions, but also we have a room to leave that particular investor to decide if that is in accordance with his or her Islamic beliefs or not. Ethio Telecom, being a service provider, Ethio Telecom have been provided with a temporary authorization to do a brokerage service for the Ethio Telecom IPO. It's a very specific temporary authorization. But if Ethio Telecom wants to be a capital market service provider and fulfills all the requirements under the licensing and regulation directive, I think we will review their applications and either give them their license or not. It depends on our review of their application. But what we have done is a temporary authorization, and it's because as if you have seen the Telebr app, whereby they do the IPOs, it has an embedded KYC and other function that should have been performed by a broker. Very unfortunately, we don't have any broker or investment bank which does a retail brokerage service. That's why we've licensed, given the Ethio Telecom a temporary authorization to do that. But going forward, they can apply for the service providers. We will review their applications according to the existing regulatory frameworks. In terms of international investors, from the very start, the Ethiopian capital market is opened for international actors. There is no limitations. You know, international actors may have preferences. For example, some banks want to have a retail commercial banking license to be part of the Ethiopian capital market exercise, for example, to have an investment bank. It's kind of complementary service because of the fact that banking operations proclamation, that draft, is not yet out, and the retail banking is not open for international investors. It kind of have, I'd say, one of the questions most international investors to, especially in terms of service provision, they raise this question. Other than that, the Ethiopian capital market from the very beginning is open to international actors, be it investors, be it service providers. There is no restrictions to that.
Thanks. I'll just address this question around risk management and volatility. And I think there is a broader risk management framework that the exchange has put in place and other service providers will also put in place. But speaking of volatility, and because it's really pertinent today, and I think I want you to, if you find any Kenyan besides you, ask them how Safaricom IPO went well or not so much well. When was this? 14 years ago? A critical gap that we identified during that IPO was investor education. A lot of us expected, at least back then in Nairobi, prices of a security or a share that we buy would only increase and will not come down, and retail investors were disappointed. So volatility, especially for retail investors, especially in an IPO like this one, starts not from markets, not from secondary markets, but starts from initial offering and then what comes down the line after the initial offering. Having said that, just like any other exchange, ASX will have its own what we call dynamic and static circuit breakers. So we always manage, for instance, how far a price of a security can go up or low within a day or within a week. So that's how we, at least when volatility is identified as a risk, that's how we manage it in a market. But it goes beyond and broader than that. And so I think I just want to mention about Sharia securities. I think this is an area that Ethiopia has a big potential, an area that Africa has a big potential. We haven't done much. I think there's only 3 sukuks listed in NSE. You only can count 3 countries probably in Africa, Egypt, South Africa, and Nigeria, as having a robust Sharia compliant securities or ethical securities. Ethiopia can be one of the top Sharia compliant security offering countries, destinations, and we're working towards that. And I think the key goal here, obviously, is not about, to be very frank about investor education. It's not about intermediaries and market infrastructure. Rather, it's about whether or not we have Sharia compliant investable companies. So that's where we need to do a lot more. Regions can do a lot more on these. Municipalities can do a lot more on these. Companies can do a lot more on these. It's a way to get cheaper funds. And it doesn't matter whether you're a Muslim-owned or not. If it is easier, cheaper, accessible, efficient, then I think many companies can afford to do it. And I think this is already something that the banks are struggling in terms of to whom, I think there has been a big potential. If I'm not mistaken, at least there should be around 200 to 300 billion already in Sharia compliant saving. But how much of that is being invested in the right way, in the appropriate way, and the companies that need it the most, I'm not sure. So we're already having our eyes on this 200 billion already. And if you tell me, if I go to, for instance, Jijiga and Amana Isuzu, telling people that there is a good return if you invest in this sukuk, I think there is a huge room to educate through products. You don't have to educate what Sharia securities are just for the sake of it. And that's what Zamzam Bank needs to do. Become a Sharia compliant advisor or a Sharia advisor, and then bring the companies to market. On technology, yes, brokers, dealers, investment banks are free to get their own system, back office system and order management system, and hook with our system. Or they can also use our broker back office system and mobile application systems. Essentially, what we prefer is you learn first of what we've already procured and implemented. And from that, if you kind of have special needs and unique competitive advantages, then you might as well go and get your own. But I think it has taken us a little bit of time to understand what is needed. So you might as well just learn from our technology and get your own. I think I can stop here, but just to reflect on foreign investors, as Hana said, there is no Ethiopian FDI regime has been already liberal on many of the sectors in terms of attracting foreign investment. But to get sufficient foreign investment, one, obviously, foreign investors would like to see the foreign exchange stability. That's one. Second, the right valuations, the right type of companies already. So even if the limitations are not regulatory, other macroeconomic and market-based limitations may inhibit foreign investors, and that's where we need to work a lot. And I think the reason why I wanted to pick up on this, and obviously I'm trying to attract many investment banks, especially from the commercial banks in Ethiopia, is one reason that many banks in Africa become an investment bank, commercial banks become investment bank, or do brokerage, is to be a way in or a way out for foreign investors. So just take Kenya, for instance. 50% of the liquidity at the NSE is dependent on foreign investors. So this is a $16 billion market. I would say roughly up to $5 million per day trade on equity side. 50% of that is foreign investor. It means as a bank, I can be a custodian, a depository for that FX that's coming in and out, and provide much more services to that angle. So we're very intentional about attracting foreign investors, mainly because it supports the liquidity of our market, but also because it supports the ecosystem. And that's what the ecosystem seems to be needing today. Thanks.
Maybe we're conscious of time. Just one final comment from Dr. Brook, or all the the panelists. Just one key message that you have. I know conscious of time, but just from the perspective of EIH, because I have one question, especially from the international investors' perspective. So maybe what EIH can do. Already you have started some work, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously EIH will do a lot of stuff and we'll make those announcements where there will be more companies to be coming to the capital market ecosystem, but obviously the launch of the exchange is the next major milestone. As you know, it's an EIH company that grew out of EIH and became a share company, so that's also a very exciting expectation. But looking at everyone here in this room having a significant amount of interest gives me a lot of confidence that we'll have one of the most vibrant capital markets in the continent. And as a result, this will have a serious impact on our economic growth, job creation, and really finding we're in the asset allocation business. So looking at without a capital market, asset allocation is not going to be efficient. So this is something that really wonderful, and then the excitement and the participation of everyone is really wonderful.